Howdy folks, welcome to module 18 of the CompTIA A course. Now as you can see, this module is called supporting mobile software. So this module is obviously going to be a lot about mobile devices, phones, tablets, that kind of stuff. Now what sections do we have in this module? Folks, it consists of three main sections which we'll be going into. The first one is configure mobile operating system security. The second section I'm going to be taking you guys through is troubleshoot mobile operating system and app software. And the third and the last section, which has got nearly an identical name, is troubleshoot mobile operating system and app security. All right, folks, there you have it. That is the three main sections for this specific module. Now, before we dive into that first main section, just a couple of things I want to tell you guys, just in case you don't know. Now, in case you haven't heard me say this in the previous modules, once I've done the last module of this course, which is module 20, I'm going to be uploading a couple of dedicated videos which will have practice questions in them for the A+ exams. So before you ask, no, these questions are not the actual questions from the exam because that is not allowed. It's not allowed by the vendor, but they will measure you on the same skills and they will obviously, check on the same objectives and all that kinds of stuff. So yeah, stay tuned for that kinds of stuff, guys. Now, if you haven't done it already, please remember to give this video a like. Otherwise, well, other people out there that actually need it might not see it. And then maybe if you want, maybe subscribe. All right, so what was that first section? It is called Configure Mobile Operating System Security. The very first topic we're going to be talking about in this first section is screen locks. Now, this is something that most of us have actually used and seen, and I think the majority of you guys can probably confirm this. So with regards to screen locks, keep in mind we're talking mostly about phones and tablets here, but this is obviously not limited to that. But that's pretty much what we've got in mind here. So when we talk about screen locks, guys, that is your cell phone or tablet when it locks the screen. So when you're not using it. This can be because it is timed out. This can be because you've manually locked the screen. So the first kind of screen lock we get, yes, you get different kinds of screen locks, folk, is screen lock with swipe. So that means this device is not locked. It's not a good idea to go do that, but some of us do go and do that. I wouldn't recommend that. So when your phone screen eventually turns itself off, or when you go and turn the phone screen or the tablet screen off, it's not actually locked. It just looks like it is locked. And as soon as you swipe the screen turns back on and the phone is unlocked. So no authentication is required to unlock this device. The second kind of screen lock we get is secure screen lock, which is the one I recommend, and this is luckily the one that most of us end up using. So if regarding the secure screen lock, I think it speaks for itself. So you can either go and use a PIN or a password to go and unlock it. Not a lot of us go and do that. Maybe in the early days we used to go and do that, but these days that just takes too long for the average Joe. Even if you've got a short 4-digit PIN number, yes, it'll work. Yes, it's going to go and achieve the task here, but it is unuser friendly and it's time consuming. The same can be said of a password, which is probably going to be even longer. So other options worth looking at here, which most of us end up doing, is a fingerprint. You'll find that the majority of these devices have a fingerprint scanner these days, either on the side of the device, maybe on the back of the device. For some of these devices, you can actually hold your fingerprint on the screen and it'll scan your fingerprint. So fingerprint is a very popular option with most of these devices. A third option to go and use, which is slightly less popular, not a lot of people are using it yet, is facial recognition. A fourth option when it comes to screen lock, which is the last one I'll mention for now, is pattern. Now, between fingerprint and pattern, these two are the most common two ones that most folks go and use. I myself normally like using fingerprint and pattern. So I'll either go and draw a pattern on the screen, there's like 9 dots for the most part, and you've got to go draw some sort of hidden pattern, or you hold your fingerprint against the scanner and voila. Now, something I also want to mention here regarding screen locks, guys, is failed login attempts lockout. Now, this is something that's configured on most devices by default, and surprisingly, most Windows machines, laptops and desktops and servers and stuff, don't actually have this by default. Now, I'm not saying they don't have it at all. You can go and turn it on, you can go and configure it, and I normally tell people to go and do that, and yet most people ignore my advice and they think it's not necessary. Now, on phones and tablets, something you guys would have noticed by now is if you were to get that security wrong 3 times in a row, let's say you get the pin wrong 3 times, the password, maybe you draw the pattern wrong 3 times, what's going to happen on average here is that device will lock itself. It will either lock itself entirely or it will time itself out, which is the more popular option. Majority of devices will time itself out. I can't tell you exactly what the timeout period will be. It does vary from device to device, but let's say for argument's sake, it will time out for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you can try for a fourth time. Should you get it wrong a fourth time, it will once again time out, maybe for the same time, possibly for a longer time, or it could very well end up locking itself. Now, normally after the fourth time I've seen it will just time out for the same period again and again and again. Now, this is actually a very effective way with regards to blocking people from cracking your password. The average person cannot crack your password as a human being, so we end up using what we call password cracking software. You normally need a supercomputer. It's going to try a whole bunch of passwords in a certain amount of time. Now, if you were to go and enforce some sort of failed login attempts on your device, especially on Windows laptops and desktops and stuff, guys, that actually stops that password cracker completely in its tracks. It is very, very effective, and yet so many people out there don't actually make use of it. I keep telling my clients and my customers and everybody, guys, please go and use this. It is completely for free. You just need to go and turn it on and go and configure it, and yet most of them don't actually go and do it. They always think they're not going to get hacked. Sooner or later, we are all going to get hacked. It's only a matter of time. So all we can do here is just try and make it as difficult as possible and as inconvenient as possible for that perpetrator. All right, folks, let's move on to the second topic, mobile security software. So what do we mean by that? The first thing we've got here is patching or operating system updates. Now keep in mind, we're coming at this from a phone or a tablet perspective for the most part, but this stuff does obviously apply to laptops and desktops as well. So I'm sure you guys know by now, someone would have said it somewhere along the line, but patching is always very important, and having the latest updates for your respective device, whatever it might be, is also very, very important. So these patches, think of them as band-aids. So from time to time, you're going to find some guy in his mom's basement. He's got nothing better to do with his time, and he or she is going to discover some sort of vulnerability. And this can be in Windows, it can be on Android, it can be on iOS, it can be specifically related to a specific device. And when they discover that weakness, they will either themselves try to take advantage of that, or they will sell it to the highest bidder, and he or she or they or it will then go and take advantage of that vulnerability. Same applies to operating systems. So you'll find, especially of phones, these little buggers, they tend to update every second or third or fourth day these days. It's actually becoming a bit of an annoyance, to be honest. On my side, it's really frustrating at this point in time. So what can we do besides updating our devices and patching our devices? We can also look at things like anti-malware apps. Now, I'm sure you know by now what malware is, and you probably know what anti-malware is. So anti-malware, if we look at a computer or a desktop or laptop, that will be things like your antivirus, your anti-spyware, anti-adware. That all falls into the category of anti-malware apps. Now, what about phones and tablets? Do these little buggers also have apps like that? You'll find that for the most part, by default, these devices do not actually come out of these apps. You might get lucky, I'm not throwing all devices into the pool here, but the majority of devices at least do not come out with these apps. Now, does that stop you from adding them afterwards? Definitely not, guys. There is nothing stopping you or the user from going into a store of your choice, and when I say store, I mean online stores, like the app stores, going into a store of your choice and just downloading one of these apps. Now, just be careful. Some of these apps do cost money. Sometimes they're for free, sometimes they're not. And the same goes for firewall apps. The majority of phones and tablets do not come out with a firewall, but nothing stops you or the user from adding a firewall to that device. Now, that is actually all I need to say to you guys, but I want to add on to that. This is not really related to the course or the exam. It's just an extra that might help you guys in the industry, and it might help you with your personal phone one day, maybe one of your users. If a phone or a tablet comes out with this software that we just mentioned, this anti-malware software and this firewall, if it has it built in and it comes like that from the factory when you bought it, then you'll find it's actually pretty reasonable. It's not going to kill your battery life. It's not going to make the phone excessively slow, anything like that. But if you were to go and add this stuff afterwards to that device, is it going to work? Probably. It's probably going to work. The drawback is that phone or device of yours did not come out with that stuff. So what you'll notice in most cases here is this anti-malware or this firewall you added, they tend to, well, draw a lot of your battery life, especially anti-malware. Firewalls not so much, but anti-malware, they tend to draw a lot from your phone's battery life because it's constantly scanning stuff now in the background, and this is not something that was designed to go and do. So it'll work, but your battery life is going to be a heck of a lot slower, and there's obviously a chance that it might also go and increase your data usage from time to time. Anyway, moving on to our third topic here, enterprise mobility management. Some folks just call this EMM, not really something I hear people say though. So generally we just call this enterprise mobility management. So from a company perspective, when you are at the company as the IT guy or the IT lady, I mean these days it's not just guys that's doing IT, it's also women, so a lot of respect there. So when it comes to us managing people with their devices, the whole landscape has changed as we know it. In the old days, as recently as 10 or 15 years ago, everybody, the IT guys, the staff members, everybody would drive into the office, you would sit down at a desk, and you would work on a laptop or a desktop. For most people, it'll probably be a desktop, and if you were in management or something, or if you were a salesperson or a manager, you might have a laptop. You might be lucky enough to have a laptop. Now that has completely changed. You'll find that in the average company, at least half of the staff members are no longer working from the office. They're working from home. Now, is it because of COVID? Yes and no. I mean, COVID put it on the fast track, but if you think about it, we were heading in that direction anyway. So folks are working from home quite a lot these days. People are no longer using just a desktop or a laptop. They're also using phones and tablets and all kinds of other devices these days. So that becomes a bit of a conundrum. It becomes a bit of a pickle to go and manage these folks and their devices if they're not necessarily the office and they're not necessarily using Windows. How do we manage these users? How do we manage these devices? How do we troubleshoot these things? How do we give these people what they need? If someone needs an update, how do I give it to them? If someone needs an app or an application or anything in that regard, how do I give it to them? It poses about a whole new can of worms, doesn't it? All right, so with regards to mobile deployment models, there's two ways you can go about this these days, at least. So keep in mind, we're talking about where we are at this point in time, so not 10 years ago, we're talking about right now as things stand. So you can either go and have yourself a situation where we have bring your own device, we just call this BYOD normally. So in the exam, I'm not saying they will ask you about BYOD, but it might be mentioned in a question. So somewhere in a question or somewhere in one of your possible answers, they might mention BYOD, even though the question is not directly related to BYOD. And if you don't know what BYOD stands for, the whole question itself might not make any sense to you. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with these abbreviations, guys. So BYOD, it stands for bring your own device. What does that mean? It means you or the user are bringing their own device to the office. Well, these days they don't even go to the office. They're using their own device for the purposes of work. So it's the user's own laptop, it's their own phone, it's their own tablet. It belongs to them. It is their property. They bought it with their own money, and they're using it for the purposes of work. Most commonly, you'll find this is probably going to be a phone or a tablet. Laptops and desktops, that's generally provided by the company in most cases. So with BYOD, it's got its own benefits, it's got its own drawbacks. Benefits here, that's pretty obvious, is it's going to cost the company less in the sense of buying assets. The company doesn't have to go buy these devices, people are paying for them out of their own pocket. A drawback here is, since it belongs to the people, you don't have as much control over it as you might like. So these folks can obviously go home, or they might be from home to begin with. They can go to those websites that's not so nice, which has got illegal content. They can go download some pirate movies and pirate games and pirate this and pirate that. And that is not a good thing. It's illegal, and those websites are extremely unsafe. somewhere along the line, these folks are going to get themselves into trouble. They're going to get some malware on that device. And at some point in time, they're going to want to access your company network with their device, which has now been compromised. Can you guess what's going to happen here, folks? Your company network, as well as your company assets, are now also going to get compromised. So that's a bit of a drawback. Now, another kind of deployment model we get here is corporate owned, which is probably the more common one. This is the more popular one, and I think you're going to probably figure out what that means. That means the devices that you or your company use, or your users use, they don't belong to you. They belong to the company. So the company will issue you or the users with a laptop, desktop, tablet, or phone. And since it belongs to the company, since it belongs to the corporate, they've got full right and say here as to what goes and what doesn't go. So if they don't want you to have certain applications, well, tough bananas. You won't have them. If they do want you to have certain applications, and if they do want you to use this device in a certain manner, you've got to do it. Otherwise, well, you're not going to work there anymore, or they're going to take away that privilege of having that device. So a drawback here to having company-owned devices is it's going to cost the company extra money in the sense of buying these assets. But there's normally way more benefits than drawbacks. The benefits is you've got so much more control over these devices, and you can kind of potentially block people from going to these unsavory websites. I see that's what CompTIA calls it. They call it unsavory websites. I love how they phrase that. I would never have even thought of that, but the word CompTIA uses is unsavory websites. How weird is that? Right, folks, so never mind mobile deployment models, you also get mobile device management. Now, what I don't see them mentioning here, and I'm just going to mention it, you also get mobile application management. So mobile device management is commonly referred to as an MDM. We call it MDM for short. Mobile application management, which is not in this course, is called a MAM for short. MAM, which is mobile application management. Now, what is mobile device management? It's not really a specific something. You get many somethings out there that classifies as an MDM, but the most common one, the most widely used one, the most well-known one is Microsoft Intune. It's something called Microsoft Intune. It's a platform for Microsoft. I mean, the name is in there. It tells you everything you need to know. It's a cloud platform for Microsoft. If you don't know what it is, it was originally designed to allow us administrators to manage people's phones and tablets. Now, that's not the only thing we use it for, guys. We use this to manage people's phones, tablets, laptops, desktops. And where it gets interesting, in case you don't know, I can manage any device anywhere, regardless of what it is, regardless of what operating system it's running. It doesn't have to be a Windows device. Pretty interesting, right? This can be an Android device, can be an iOS device, Linux, Unix, Red Hat, you name it. I can manage any device anywhere, anytime. The catches here is, there's obviously a few catches. These devices have to have an internet connection. Otherwise, how do you plan on managing these devices? So they've got to be connected to the internet, and there's an and. These devices have to be enrolled usually into your company's Intune environment. You can think of this as giving yourself permission. So, I mean, if I just went ahead and said, hey, I can manage any device, anywhere, anytime, that kind of sounds like hacking. It sounds a bit like a bit of a security concern, doesn't it? So to prevent this from being hacking, the catch is these devices need to be enrolled into your company's Intune environment, which is basically giving you permission. Now, how do you enroll these devices into the company Intune environment? There's a million and one ways, guys. It's really up to you. The quickest, the most efficient, and the most common way for most companies is to do it while you're about to give this device to the person. You know, when you're provisioning that device of what it needs. So this is a new employee in a company, and he or she's about to get a new device, or someone just in general is about to get a new device. You would normally go and provision that machine first with what they will need. The operating system they will need, the software, the drivers, the updates and configurations and settings and blah, blah, blah. Whatever that person is going to need, you would provision that machine. Now, while you're doing that, you'd find the average technician like myself would take that opportunity as a golden moment to go and enroll that device into Microsoft Intune. When you've got it there, you might as well go and do it then. Other ways would be to go and use SCCM. So if this device has got SCCM, if it's currently on the SCCM environment, for those of you that know what that is, you can use that to get it into Intune, and you can actually go vice versa as well. You can alternatively go and use something called Autopilot, for those of you that know what Autopilot is. If you don't know what SCCM is, if you don't know what Autopilot is, do not worry about those terminologies at this point in time, guys. It's not part of the course. It is not an exam. But if you do know what they are, well, that's great for you. Of course, that's really going to benefit you going out into the field, of course. So we've spoken about enrollment. You guys know what enrollment is now. So these devices have to be enrolled first before you can manage them. Now, once I've enrolled these devices that we've spoken about so much now, what exactly can I do then? What is the purpose of that? I can then control these devices. So first of all, I can see a lot of things. I can see what device the user has. I can see this is a phone, tablet, laptop, desktop. I can see the physical specs, the hardware specs of that device. I can see how much system memory they've got, in other words, RAM. I can see how much storage they got, in other words, hard drive space. I can see the processor, in other words, the CPU. I can see what operating system has been installed, whether it's Windows or something else. If it's an operating system, let's say Windows, I can see the build, I can see the edition, I can see the version, I can see everything. I can see what updates are installed, what drivers are installed. Now, never mind seeing, I can do. I can install or uninstall drivers, updates, or programs. Heck, people, I can even go and remote wipe the device. So if me or the company or the client's company deem it necessary, we can go and give an instruction for this device to go and remote wipe itself. So should a device be misplaced, should this device belong to the user and they've now left the organization, we can actually give that device an instruction to go and remote wipe itself. Pretty interesting, right? So you've got app and feature control and a heck of a lot more. I see CompTIA just says app and feature control, but guys, it's a heck of a lot more. You can go and enforce things like profile of security requirements. So you can force these folks to meet certain security requirements first before they can use the device, or more importantly, before they can access company resources. These requirements, in case you're curious, it's not really part of the course, but let me throw in a couple for you guys. This can be things like the device has to have MFA, multi-factor authentication. This device perhaps has to be, geographically speaking, in a specific location. We normally use public IP addresses to do that. This device has to have a certain build or edition of Windows. It has to have the latest updates of Windows or whatever operating system this device is running. It has to have this, it has to have that. So you get to specify what the requirements are, the prerequisites, the criteria for this device. And if it doesn't meet that requirements, this device will not be able to do things like access your company resources, of course. Pretty neat, right? If you find all of this interesting, guys, then you might enjoy a Microsoft course, more specifically the ones that's got Microsoft Intune in them. So if you're interested in that kind of course, I would advise you to go check out my course on my channel, which is called MD 102. Go check in the Microsoft section. There's one called MD 102, and that kind of focuses a lot on this kinds of stuff. That's just for the ones that's interested, of course. All right, folks, speaking of remote wipe with Intune and all that, that brings us to Locator apps and remote wipe. Now, if I say Locator app or apps, I think we all have a good idea of what that is. You don't necessarily have to be in IT to have an idea of what a Locator app is. The name tells you what you need to know. So I think the best example will probably be Apple devices. Apple devices have something called Find My Phone. At least I think that's what they call it. I don't have an Apple device, so I can't tell you for sure. But the last time I checked, I believe it's called Find My Phone. And the idea here is if you misplace your device, then you're supposed to be able to find your device. Now, Android's got something similar. You can also go and find your phone, when it comes to Android. Now, what these folks don't tell you about this applications is it saps a lot of your battery life, guys. It saps your data, and it requires you to have the GPS on at all times. If you were to run out of data, if GPS is turned off, any of these factors, then guess what? It is not going to work. So the majority of the time, these locator apps will probably not work for you or the average person. But in essence, at least now you know what it's all about. It comes down to having an application which allows you to find your phone in case you went and misplaced it. Now, some folks are under the impression that these things can be used if your phone has been stolen. Yeah, I suppose that's going on the assumption that the perpetrator was not so smart, to go and turn this stuff off. But on average, when someone steals someone's device, the first thing they do is they turn it off, They remove the SIM card if there's some sort of SIM card in it. And well, yeah, if that has happened, then you're not going to be able to find this device, guys. It's not really going to work now, is it? Anyway, you'll see the title also says remote wipe. So once again, just like the Locator apps, remote wipe, the name also tells you what you need to know. It allows you to go and wipe this device remotely. The most common way we tend to go and do this is obviously using something like Microsoft Intune. Now, just like the Locator app, guys, it's got T's and C's. So if you have misplaced a device, yeah, sure, you can probably go and give it the instruction to go and remote wipe. If someone has left the company and you or the company feel they might have sensitive information, sure, you can probably go and remote wipe it. But if this device happens to be, let's say, stolen, it's not really going to work, because just like the Locator app, in most cases this device has been turned off, SIM card might possibly have been removed, which means the device is not able to receive the instruction that says wipe. If it's not able to receive the instruction, it's not going to work. So if that device is on a mobile network or a hotspot slash Wi-Fi network of some kind, sure, it might work. But unless it's on one of those networks, guys, it ain't going to work. So that's what it's all about when we talk about remote wipe. Now, the last topic I've got for you guys in this particular section is something called Internet of Things. This is more commonly known as IoT, capital I, small o, capital T. Internet of Things. Now, this is literally going to be a very small and quick topic in A+. It is not a topic we tend to cover very deep in A+, but there are full-blown courses out there for just Internet of Things. Now, some of you guys might not be aware, but pretty much everything these days are starting to use Internet of Things. It's all around you, you just don't know it. For example, if you look at something like a home automation system. So for those of you that's got a lot of money to go and throw away, some of these homes have got automatic systems. So you can go and use your remote, your phone, and you can give your home instructions to go and close the blinds, dim the lights, turn the lights on. Sometimes you can go and clap your hands, the lights will go and dim, or something will happen in the house. Your sound will start playing, your sound system will start playing. That is an example of Internet of Things. This could be something like smart hubs. It could be something like speaker control, which I just mentioned. So you can go and basically give instructions to a speaker of some kind. Now, where you'll also find this very commonly, which which is very surprising to a lot of people, is ATM systems, folks. So if you go to an ATM to go and deposit money or withdraw money of some kind, believe it or not, that operating system on there, guys, this is not exclusive to a certain bank, is in fact Internet of Things. People just don't know it. All right, so that brings us to the end of the first main section, moving into the second main section for this module, Troubleshoot Mobile Operating System and App Software. First topic here is mobile device troubleshooting tools. So I'm sure by now you guys are fairly familiar with some of the tools that's built into your Windows operating system. So we'll get to Android and iOS and those platforms in a moment. So when we talk about Windows operating systems, your client and your server operating systems, we've spoken about quite a few tools in this particular course. We've shown you guys some of these tools. Some of them are hidden. Only you would know about them. And even if the user does know about them, they very often don't know how to go and use these specific tools. Now, just like you get those tools on Windows that the user probably doesn't know about, and if they do, they probably don't know how to go and use it, the same concept, guys, actually applies to mobile devices, like a phone or a tablet. So a phone and a tablet also has built-in tools, which for the most part we don't know about. And if you do happen to know about them, you probably don't know how to go and use them. So, yeah. Now, we mention these factors, these tools and stuff on a phone, but the fact of the matter, guys, is you don't need to know what these tools are, and you don't need to know how to go and use these tools. It's not part of A+, and it's quite frankly got nothing to do with computers or servers and stuff. For the most part, you guys are computer technicians, server technicians. So phones, that's a whole different ball game, and that's a whole different field of expertise. So when someone's got an issue of their laptop, desktop, or server, yes, that's you guys. They're going to get you in, or they're going to bring the device to you. But when someone's got a phone issue, they're going to take it to the phone technicians. And that includes myself, guys, and you guys. So I might be an expert when it comes to computers. But if I've got an issue with my phone, depending on what it is, I'm probably going to take it to a technician, which is a phone technician. It's a mutual respect. So you guys just need to know what a mobile device is. You need to know that these devices also have their own respective tools that can be used, and you need to know how we can go about accessing these tools. How do you unlock these tools? Because they're not available by default. That's all you need to know for this course and for this specific exam, guys. So regarding mobile device troubleshooting tools, we've got mobile device configuration tools. Some of these tools, if not all of them in some cases, can usually be accessed in the settings app. If you don't know what the settings app is, that is when you go into your device's settings. If you're using iOS or Android, you just go to the little icon or the little picture, whatever it says, settings, and in there you'll find a whole bunch of settings regarding all kinds of things on your phone, your tablet. That is the settings app. We actually call it the same thing on Windows. Alternatively, if you're using Android, you can go into the notifications shade. So on an Android device, you'll find at the top, you can normally drag down like a little menu. It doesn't look an exact way because, they're constantly updating this stuff. And then from time to time, the options you've got available and what they look like, they'll change. But in that notification shade, you'll get some basic options on the iOS operating system. So for Apple devices, you'll have to go into the control center. Lastly, folks, when it comes to your configuration tools, you can also go possibly access the task list. Now, what you might also want to go and try when it comes to troubleshooting these devices, if you are willing to go and try it yourself, is to reboot. I kid you not. It might sound silly. It might sound funny. Now, why is it funny? Because it actually works. That famous IT joke where we ask people, have you tried turning the device off and on again? Yes, I kid you not. Have you tried turning it off and on again? It's an actual thing, guys. You'll be surprised to know how much actually happens on the average device when you just go and turn it off and on again. There's a lot that happens. It's not just a single thing. There's a lot that happens. So the very first step in troubleshooting many issues is simply just to go and restart, especially if that device is not in your possession. So if you're helping someone remotely or over the phone, ironically over the phone, when it's a phone issue. So over the phone, you just ask them, sir, ma'am, have you tried turning the device on and off again? And I always find it funny that they get so mad at us, but they don't realize that it actually solves a lot of issues. We're not trying to insult them. We're not trying to do anything here. We're not trying to be funny. It really does fix a lot of issues. Now, guys, if all else fails, just like on a computer where if all else fails, you might resort to something more drastic and extreme like formatting the machine and just reinstalling Windows, you can go and do a factory reset on a tablet or a phone. On a Windows machine, you're going to probably have to go and manually install the operating system again if you go do a format. But with a factory reset, the good news, guys, is you don't have to go and reinstall the operating system manually. It is there. So when you go into your phone or your tablet and you go to the factory reset option, if you can find it, it's normally somewhere in your settings pane. If you go there, it's going to put the phone, not tablet back, exactly the way you got it when you first bought it. So when you took that device out of the box the very first time, before it did any of its updates, before you put any data on there or configured anything, when it was brand new from the factory, that is what factory reset does. It basically tells you in the name what you need to know. It's going to put it back exactly the way it was. So if you are able to back up any data, pictures, photos, videos, anything like that you would like to back up, you should probably go and do that because factory reset does not keep it. Absolutely everything gets wiped, including photos, videos, personal files, contacts. It is all gone. So factory reset wipes all apps, settings, and user data, guys. And this is normally a last resort step in troubleshooting many issues. So if all else fails, factory reset. Now, speaking of which, I actually need to go and do this on my kids' phones. I did this literally like a month ago on both my kids' phones. The one is 6, and I think the other one is 8 years old. And they both have their own Samsung smartphones and whatnot. And you know how kids are. They'll go into the Play Store, whatever. They'll go and download any game they can find. Most of these games are for free. But there's always a catch. These games normally have so many ads on them. Now, unfortunately, what happens in these scenarios is because my kids just go and download any game they can find, there's bound to be some malware in there. Never mind the normal ads just splashing on the screen. There's malware. So at least once a month, I find myself having to go and factory reset these kids' phones because they went and installed some game that's got malware on it. And it just so happens that both my kids has got this again now. It's not necessarily the same malware, but I can see for a fact they've got malware. And now the most recent one, what's happening here is They see constant ads on the phone. Not just because they're in the games. No, 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 no. Even if the phone is just idling there can be absolutely nothing open on this device, and you'll see an ad come up. You can go into the system menus, and you'll see an ad come up. The phone can be locked, and then sometimes an ad will pop up. It is ridiculous, these ads. It basically gets to a point where you cannot even browse the phone. So this phone is going to have to, or well, both of them is going to have to be reset again. It's not exact same malware we've got, but I can see they've got malware again. So it's, what can I say? It's kids. So I'm going to have to go and do that again. Alright, so still on the topic of troubleshoot, let's talk about troubleshoot device and operating system issues. So what if operating system fails to update? So if the operating system fails to update, what could you possibly look at? What could it possibly be? So with regards to the operating system failing to update, I would say check compatibility. So if it's an operating system that came out on the device, so if you've got a phone or a tablet or something, and the operating system that's currently on the device is the one that came out on the device, then it's probably not a compatibility issue. But if you or someone else installed an operating system onto that phone or that tablet, which is not the original one that came out on that device, that could possibly be the issue. I'm not saying it is, but it could be the issue from a compatibility perspective. It can run maybe the operating system, but it does not allow the operating system to go and update due to a compatibility issue. Alternatively, which is more likely going to be the case, is something like a network issue. Maybe this device is not connected to a hotspot slash Wi-Fi network. Maybe it's not on a mobile network. Maybe it doesn't have an IP address. If you're on a mobile network, maybe you don't have any data. Maybe you don't have any money on your SIM card. That could be the case. It could be a power issue. Maybe the device does not have enough battery life. So often you'll find with phones and tablets, it will go and check how much battery life is on this device, because often the update's going to take a while to download, and even more so they're going to install. It's going to want to restart. And I've seen often with my phones, even myself, if my phone goes below a certain battery amount, let's say 5% or 10%, it will not update because it knows it's going to run out of battery life during the installation, which could possibly cause a whole corruption and the whole phone is rendered useless. So you need to have at least a certain amount of battery life, 20%, 30% or more, before the phone or the device will actually go and update itself. Just food for thought, guys. Alternatively, it could also be a storage issue. Now, this is a real thorn on my side these days, because I've seen often these days, if you look at the cheaper phones, the lower ranking ones, which are not too expensive, because we don't all have money for fancy expensive phones, one of the ways they bring down the costs is to give you way less storage on that device. Now, when you buy that phone, it's fine, it works great, it's got storage, you don't have anything installed in there yet. Maybe it's got a 32 gig memory or a 64 gig memory. So I think the other phone that I got the other day has a 32 gig memory. It's a 32 gig memory phone. And now after you go and buy that phone, it already has about 15 to 20 gigs of the 32 gig that's been used by the factory operating system and apps and all that stuff. And as soon as you get that phone, it starts updating and it starts updating. And these updates, them alone, without you installing anything on that phone, without you doing anything on that phone, these updates alone take up a tremendous amount of space. You'll find it very well. In the beginning, you can end up with only like 1 gigs or 3 gigs of storage space. And now, after about another month or two, suddenly you run out of storage space, even though you have done nothing yet. The phone, I kid you not, will eventually run out of storage space, especially these cheaper phones these days. It's a real frustration. The updates are basically getting out of hand these days. Phones are getting released quicker and quicker. The updates are getting released quicker and quicker, and they keep getting bigger and bigger to the point now where we keep running out of space. So they're basically forcing you now these days to get a phone or a tablet that's got massive amounts of storage, or to go and expand that storage with some sort of, SD card or some kind, which gets ridiculous. So the only good news here is, guys, SD cards have become insanely cheap. You can buy them online, you can buy them anywhere. You'll find some of them are massive these days, but there's lots of stores online that sell these at ridiculously cheap prices. Other issues we might face is the device randomly reboots. So if you look at something like a tablet or a phone, keep in mind that's what we've got in mind here, not laptops or desktops today. We're talking specifically about tablets and phones. So if your tablet or your phone, or for one of your customers users, if it randomly reboots, this can be a lot of things. It could possibly be that it's overheating. That's the most common cause I've seen. So if it's overheating, I've seen sometimes it's the cover of the phone or the tablet. So if the cover of the phone or the tablet is not the best kind, it might be causing this phone or tablet to overheat. Sometimes it's due to you playing on this phone or tablet while it's charging. That causes it to overheat and will cause it to restart. Other times it's because of an update, which is actually the most common cause I've seen. Your phone or tablet works perfectly fine. You do the exact same stuff you do every day. You haven't done anything new in this device. The only thing that's new is an update took place yesterday, maybe. And suddenly your phone is overheating. Sometimes it gets so bad to the point where it actually burns the palm of your hand. If you hold that phone, it actually burns you. And it's just idling. You're not doing anything on it yet, but yet it burns you. And it starts restarting. That is due to an update that took place. This is a very common issue we have. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. I mean, you can go and try and factory reset the device. Sure, it's going to work temporarily. And guess what? It's going to go and download those updates again. And as soon as it gets that update again, the exact same issue is going to happen again. So all you can essentially do here is just wait and wait and wait for them to go and release a new update which addresses this issue. It happens with any phone. It's got nothing to do with the make, the model, or the price on that phone or that device. It's gonna happen at some point in time, and all you can do is just hope they fix it as quickly as possible. So I would say check the hardware, check for overheating issues. Maybe, and then also if the issue persists after a reboot, maybe just try reboot the device. Sometimes that fixes the issue. If it does persist after reboot, then maybe you're gonna have to go and reset the device or just go and try and figure out which specific application might be causing it. Close all the applications on the device one by one, and see if you can go and figure out which one it actually is. What about if the device is just generally slow to respond? It might have been quick in the beginning, and now it's a bit sluggish. It's a bit laggy. It's a bit slow. Can be a lot of things. Once again, I would say start off with something simple, something easy and quick, like just restarting the device. If it does persist before you go ahead and just reset the device, just go and check. Maybe you can figure out which application or game or whatever is causing it. You'll find a lot of these devices have got some sort of task manager of some kind, which actually allows you to go and check what apps and services are running on this device, how much battery life they're consuming, how long they've been running, and all that kind of stuff. And often that will allow you to go and kind of figure out which app it may or may not possibly be. Last one here, guys, is screen does not auto rotate. Pretty much all phones and tablets these days have an auto rotate function. So if you hold it upright, the screen will be upright. If you turn it sideways, the screen will go and rotate again. This is called gyroscope, in case you guys don't know. On the phone, it's normally listed as auto rotate on the phone or tablet, but the actual name for that is gyroscope. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. So the very first thing you want to go and check with regards to this is check configuration. So just go and check. Maybe someone turned it off. This happens to me all the time on my phone. So I normally leave this little bugger on. And then from time to time, my wife will bother my phone because she likes the games on my phone. She'll play games and she'll do this and she'll do that. And then normally she tends to go and turn this off for some reason. And when I eventually get my phone back and I want to lie in bed or something with my phone on my side, I noticed the phone doesn't auto rotate back, or it doesn't do this, or it doesn't do that, and it's normally because she went and fiddled with my settings. So just go and check your configurations. It could very well just be left on, or it could be left off, depending on which one you want. Alternatively, it might possibly just be the specific app you're in. That is also something I've noticed. So there might be nothing wrong with your phone, there might be nothing wrong with your auto rotate. It's just the specific game or app you're in does not allow auto rotate. So if I go into specific apps on my phone, I've noticed it does not auto rotate. As soon as I go out of it, it works perfectly fine again. So just go check that out too, guys. Alright, so still talking about troubleshooting, let us talk about troubleshoot connectivity issues. So when the phone or the tablet does not want to connect to some sort of network, mobile, hotspot, Wi-Fi, you name it. First thing you want to go and check is signal strength and interference issues. It could be that maybe you or the user is honestly just too far away from wherever the signal is coming from. So if you're talking about a mobile connection, maybe this device is nowhere near any tower, no cell phone towers. Maybe there's something in the way, a mountain, a tall building, or there's something else causing interference here. If it's a hotspot / Wi-Fi network, maybe it's too far away from the access point or the router. Maybe once again something is causing interference with that signal. There's a lot of things that runs on that frequency, which happens to be 2.4 gigahertz, in case anyone's wondering. A lot of things are running on that frequency, which could very well actually be the problem. So move the devices closer and remove the protective case. I wouldn't say you have to remove the protective case in all cases. See what I did there? Remove the protective case in all cases. But start by moving closer. So if it's a Wi-Fi connection, just move closer to the access point and hotspot. See if that does anything. If it's a mobile connection, that's a little bit close. That's a little bit difficult, but you might have to drive around or walk around and see if you can get a better signal. It might just be a configuration issue, guys. It could be something like airplane mode. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten my phone on airplane mode. And when you do that, it leaves the device on, but it turns off all forms of wireless communication. So hotspot, mobile connection, NFC, Bluetooth, any form of wireless communication on that device gets turned off, disabled for the most part. And if you forget it on airplane mode, well, that device is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to connect to anything. So just go and check if something has not been turned off or on, specifically airplane mode. That's probably going to be the biggest culprit. If you're a person that travels a lot, it's going to be the biggest culprit. It might be the Wi-Fi configuration or the Bluetooth pairing. So maybe if you're the kind of person that's connecting to a Wi-Fi connection with your tablet or phone, maybe the settings have changed. Most of the time, no settings is required. Most networks, everything is on dynamic. So as soon as you type in the password, that's it. So it could be that maybe the password has expired or changed. But if you are on a network where you have to manually type in an IP address or something, maybe something has changed, guys. So, and it can also obviously be a Bluetooth pairing issue. Maybe it's no longer paired. Maybe it's too far away from the device, needs to be paired. Maybe there's something causing interference. Once again, it also runs at 2.4 gigahertz, and a lot of things causes interference in that frequency. And then lastly, guys, on this topic, troubleshoot near field communication, which we call NFC for short. Not a lot of folks use this because these days you can just send anything via WhatsApp or whatever, but it might just be that it's turned off or on, or it might just be that these two devices in question are just too far away from one another. Alright, so that brings us to the end of the second main section. Moving into the third, the last one, troubleshoot mobile operating system and app security. So the only thing that's actually changed is the last word in that title there. All right, the first thing we'll talk about here is root access security concerns. Now, when I say root access, I think a lot of you guys might not know what I'm talking about. You might have never seen this, you might never have heard of this. Root access, for those who don't know, is basically when you go and unlock your phone or your tablet's hidden developer options. So there's a lot of tools and stuff, as I've said before, that you might not know about. You might not know how to go and use them. And one of the reasons you might not know about them is because they are hidden. You need to go and unlock your device. So that brings us to owner level permissions. So with Android and Apple, there's various ways about doing it. The main way is to go to your phone, your tablet's dialer. You're going to go type in a secret code of sorts. The code is not the same for all devices. So you can have a phone, I can have a phone, it won't be the same. You can have one brand of phone, and I can have the same brand of phone as you, it will not be the same. The only time it's the same is if you've got the exact same make and the exact same model as me. But if we've got different models or different makes, it's usually not the same code, guys. So you're going to go to the dialer, you're going to go press a code. It's going to at first look like a whole bunch of random numbers, hashes, stars. It's sometimes between 10 characters and 50 characters. You're going to press it in. It's going to look like nothing's happening, and then suddenly, boom, the device has now been unlocked. Now, once it's unlocked, at first launch, you might not really notice anything unless you go into the settings app. That's normally where you'll find the biggest difference is. You go into the settings app, you're going to find it's a heck of a lot longer, this menu now. And there's a lot of tools there that you can go and make use of now, guys. So with regards to Google operating system being Android, we call this root access on Android devices. You're going to have to go and root the device. So on Android, we say you go and root the device. That's what we call it. You're going to go and root the device. You can always go and undo it as well. On Apple devices, we say you are going to go and jailbreak the device. So it's called jailbreaking on iOS devices. So what do we call it when we go and unlock these devices? Android, it's root. Apple, it's jailbreaking. Guys, you need to watch out for this. This is a question in the exam. So they'll specifically ask you about the Apple one. I don't know who decides that. I mean, in my opinion, they're both equal. But the one they'll ask you about that I've noticed is normally the jailbreaking one. They'll ask you, what do you call it when the developer options or the root access has now been enabled on a device? And you're going to find it could either be either or, but between the four possible answers in the exam, you're going to have to go and choose one. The answer you're going to look for is jailbreaking. Now, just a word of advice, this has got nothing to do with the course. Should you go and root or jailbreak a device, you're actually voiding the warranty. So if the device is under warranty of something, if you go and do that, even if you go and break the screen, which has got nothing to do with that device's, rooting or jailbreaking. If you take it back to the store and you want them to go and replace the screen, they're going to say, no, 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 we see this device has been jailbroken or rooted, and they're going to refuse to replace it because the warranty has been void. They're going to say, no, it could have been tampered with, even though tampering has got absolutely nothing to do with a broken screen, but that's what the excuse they'll go and use. They'll use any excuse not to fix your device. So yeah, now when it comes to detecting and blocking on enterprise networks, you'll find that the majority of companies out there are not too keen on you rooting your device or jailbreaking your device, because those hidden tools that we've spoken about, they can be used to do things that's not so nice. They can be used for hacking. Now, I myself, I'm going to be honest enough with you guys, I don't know how to go and do that with a phone. I know how to access these tools, but I don't know how to go and do, I suppose you can put it in quotes, hacking with these tools. I don't know how to go and do that. Know your limits, and that's my limit. I cannot do that with a cell phone or a tablet. I'm sure there are folks out there that know how to go and do that, which is obviously amazing. Now, because it's theoretically possible to do that, companies don't feel comfortable with that. So what they'll do is they'll use softwares that allow them to detect when a device has been rooted or jailbroken. So if you try and access the company network with your phone or your tablet, and that this platform sees your device is jailbroken or rooted, it's going to block your device from connecting to the company network. One of the ways we do that is to use something like Microsoft Intune, which we spoke of earlier, an example of an MDM. So as soon as you try to connect to my Wi-Fi, it's going to see, this device has been jailbroken, and it's going to block you until you go and unjailbreak it. Yes, it's possible to go and undo it. And when you unjailbreak it, then you'll be granted access again. So besides calling this rooted or jailbreaking, this is called the developer mode, guys, because it's got all kinds of fancy tools that the developers would normally go and use. Right, moving on. Mobile app source security concerns. So we all know that these phones and tablets comes out of a lot of apps from the factory. Some of them are cool, some of them suck, some of them are really just spam, in my honest opinion. Now, if you would like to go and get your own apps or your own games and stuff, where or how do we get them onto that device? Now, the most common place that the average Joe would go and use, including myself, is just the app stores that comes on this relevant device. If you look at Google's operating system Android, you would normally go into something called the Play Store. If you look at Apple's operating system iOS, I think they call it the App Gallery. Or is it called the App Store? I think it's called the App Store. And if you look at, for example, Huawei's phones or devices, I think there they call it the App Gallery, and it's also called Fedora. They've actually got two. So there you will find your apps, your games, and all that. Now you might think, okay, cool, these apps and games are all safe to use. Now, they're not all safe to use, and they're also not all free to use. Some of them are free, some of them are not. Some of them are safe, some of them are not. Now, with regards to them being safe or not, some of you guys might say, I'm just going to go look at the reviews, the comments, the ratings. Did you know you can go and rate your own app or your own game? Did you know you can go and comment on it and, give it false downloads history? So if it shows you 5,000 people has downloaded this, you can actually go and, fake that, spoof that numbers. So that being said, you cannot trust that. So what I normally do is, if I were to go and use these stores myself, I just go and check if it's a well-known app. So if it's something well-known that we can all relate to, like WhatsApp, if there was an issue, you would probably know about it. It probably would have been on the news by now. But as soon as you want to go and download those apps and games that you've never heard of before, you don't have any friends or family or co-workers that uses that app or that game, that is a leap of faith you're going to be taking. It might be malware, it might not be malware. So you need to be very careful downloading anything that you've never heard of before and where you don't know anyone using that. So with regards to these stores, with regards to the security that I just said, you get app spoofing. So that would be rogue developers placing malicious apps in these trusted stores, or it could just be someone that's bored. You get those people as well. And they will go and do what we call fake reviews, and they will go and manipulate these download figures. So it's going to show that it's got a 4-star or 5-star rating, lots of comments that makes this look like a rainbow, and the figures looks amazing. Meanwhile, it's all spoofed. It's all fake. So be very careful with regards to just downloading stuff you don't know, guys. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about in this section and in this module is mobile security system symptoms. Mobile security system symptoms. Wow, try saying that 5 times fast. First thing is general symptoms. So if your phone or your tablet, just even your users, starts experiencing things like a high number of ads, or for example fake security warnings where it tells you need to do an antivirus scan, you've got viruses even though you don't even have that, or the device becomes generally slow, sluggish and laggy, or there's limited or no internet connectivity. These could be concerns for security. Now, if I say a high number of ads, what does that sound like? That sounds like my kids' phones, doesn't it? So my kids currently have a very high number of ads. Not just when they open these games or apps that they've downloaded, but even when the phone is just lying there on the table, doing absolutely nothing. There's nothing open on it. It's just lying there and you'll just see, boom, ads start flashing on the screen constantly. So that's a very high number of ads. And that falls into the security category. It's a symptom of a possible concern of malware. So what am I going to go and do, guys? I'm going to go back up anything if needed. There's just my kids' phones. There's nothing important on there. And I'm going to go and do a factory reset. Then I know I'm safe. Also, unexpected application behavior. So when certain games or applications start behaving in a manner which is not to be expected. Suddenly these applications have got more permissions than what they should. They're doing things they're not supposed to do, or they're not doing things that they are supposed to do. Anything that is not normal, out of the ordinary behavior when it comes to permissions. That's a red flag, guys. Red alert. Go check it out. Something funky is going on there. High utilization of network traffic. So if your phone is suddenly using a lot of processing power, a lot of memory, a lot more than usual, and nothing has changed from your side, you're completely oblivious to anything new that you've installed, anything you've changed, you've done nothing really new from your side, and yet this device is using a heck of a lot more resources than what it's supposed to. Also a red flag. Lastly, leaked personal files or data. So if you start noticing that your files or data has been leaked, I don't know how you're going to notice that on a phone or a tablet, but if you're under the impression that some of this stuff is being leaked, that could be a concern as well. So this falls into things like breach notification, unauthorized account access, or location tracking. I think out of these three I've just mentioned for you guys, the one that you might figure out the quickest is probably unauthorized account access. So if you suddenly get an email from, let's say, Google that says your account has been accessed from a new device or a new location, and you know for a fact you haven't done that, yeah, that might be a bit of a concern. So you're probably going to have to go and change your password and go look at your devices. A bit of a concern. All right, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this 18th module. Like usual, I'm going to say I hope you've enjoyed it, and to give this video a like if you have. If you enjoy the content, maybe consider subscribing. Then at least you'll know when the last two modules comes out. You'll know when I go and upload those practice questions I keep talking about. So if you'd like to see those practice questions, keep an eye out for that. Maybe consider subscribing, otherwise you might miss it. Guys, before you disappear, just a shout out to the Patreon and PayPal sponsors. Thank you very much, guys. There's a list of the Patreon guys. Thank you very much, guys. There's a list of the PayPal guys. Thank you very much, guys. And then also thank you to all of you clicking on the thanks button below the videos. Those coffees that you guys keep buying me. And then just a last mention, guys, about the Discord server. You can find that in the video description down below. So if you'd like to sponsor the channel, that's in the video description down below. If you'd like to join my free Discord server, that's also in the video description down below. Right, folks, I will see you in module 19, the second last module of this course.